Hello farmers and aspiring farmers, welcome to Agricultural New Directions Agribusiness in support of Vision 2030, where we discuss everything agriculture here in Zimbabwe. We look at various departments and facets in the agricultural industry, and as such today we are going to be looking at open pond fish farming here in Zimbabwe. You would find that each and every episode we try to bring in experts who will be talking to us in terms of business fundamentals in whichever enterprise that you might be in. Farming is a formidable business, and as such you need to be well acquainted with knowledge of time value of money, production economics to ensure viability and sustainability within your enterprise. At this point in time, I've taken the liberty of inviting Ms. Ravahera. She is the Deputy Director, Aquaculture Production in the Ministry of Lands, Agriculture, Fisheries, Water, Rural Development right here in Zimbabwe. Ms. Ravahera, once again, thank you for inviting us to such a lovely place and to talk to us in terms of fish production here in Zimbabwe.
Welcome, Wadanai. Welcome to Fisheries. How are you?
Yes. As we get into our discussion, earlier on we had an episode where we're looking at fish production under greenhouse conditions. But we have taken the liberty of looking at it from a perspective of open pond fish farming. You'd find that that is where most of our Zimbabwean farmers are. That is where they can afford and putting their investment in. Can you maybe give us a brief introduction of this pond that we are standing in front of today?
This pond was constructed initially as a seepage pond where when it's filled with water it would feed the other ponds, the larger ponds behind me here, and the size of this pond is 24 by 75 meters, meaning to say it's 1,800 square meters big. And the plan for this pond is that it was mainly for a mitigatory measure whereby during the droughts or in the face of the impending El Nino that is just being talked about, or the climate change, we actually have it as our stopgap measure where we have all our stock, so that when after the drought we have fish for breeding and for stocking. Otherwise we would lose all our material in the face of drought if we don't get this as a mitigator measure to keep our breeding stock.
Okay, that was very detailed. Where we are standing within the pond, I can see there are some fish nets right in the middle of the pond to the edge. Can you talk to us in terms of those nets that I'm looking at far in between the pond? What are those in terms of your research work?
Thank you very much, Wazanai. Those are our nets. We actually designed them as hoppers where we are doing our research and we are placing in fingerlings. We have students who are attached on this institute from various universities. Those nets, we are actually using them to store the fingerlings that we would have produced from the breeding ponds. And because of the depth in this pond and enough water space and oxygen, we actually put them here as hoppers so that they can actually survive, grow, and also measurements be taken from those fingerlings that will be produced. That's on terms of length, size, feed, growth, and everything.
Okay, now you would find that there is a relationship generally between water and fish. This is an open pond whereby we have immense evaporation. In terms of replenishing your water within the pond, what are we looking at? What is your source of water? And also talk to us in terms of the stocking density. Some might want to refer to it as the carrying capacity. Can you take us through that?
Okay, first I will talk of the water reticulation. Like I have earlier on alluded to, this pond we keep it as a storage for breeding material, meaning that we need good quality water, and our water is coming from a river. This is natural water, and we have a canal system 3 kilometers long that delivers water to this point. And in this case we don't have any pumping costs because it's all by gravity through the canal. The canal is an open canal. We also have what we call a filter pond along the way so that we can actually exclude fish from the wild to come to our ponds. Okay. Issues of biosecurities that we discussed earlier on. So the filter pond will actually hold all the wild fish so that they are not passed on to this end. In terms of carrying capacity or stocking density, we are using a stocking density of 10 fish per square meter or per cubic meter. So in this pond, like I told you, it's 24 by 75, meaning to say the 1,800 square meters, we can actually have 18,000 fingerlings to be stocked in this pond.
Okay.
And that's a lot of fish to talk about, Wazanai. This is quite a large investment which requires a lot of feed, a lot of high-tech management in terms of management, so that we can actually keep the stock in this pond. And for the farmers, the aspiring farmers, we actually encourage them to start with maybe smaller ponds, 10 by 20, which are manageable, so that they can actually start to learn and understand the fish before they get into the larger fish ponds like this one. Why? Because if this pond, as big as it is, if it's infected, or if it has a disease in this pond, it means we would run a very great loss, unlike in smaller ponds. So the management of this pond has to be up to scratch in terms of water quality management and also issues of disease surveillance. We need to be on our guard in terms of checking for diseases, the bacterial diseases, and also salmonellosis, because there are sometimes when we are actually using either pig waste as manure into the ponds or poultry manure. These are also monogastrics, and they share the communicable diseases, the E. coli. So we also need to be on our guard so that we don't even infect this pond. Okay,
finally, as we round off, Ms. Rabahera, I want you to touch briefly on weeds. Can you talk to us in terms of weed management? Do we have chemical ways of controlling the weeds? Is it biological? Is it mechanical? What do we do in terms of the weeds, and maybe even the names of the weeds and how you are managing your weeds? Yeah, I can see that the pool is absolutely clear. There is no weeds.
Thank you, Azanai. Speaking of weeds, this pond is very clean, as you can see. We have desirable weeds that can grow in the pond, weeds such as the algae, which is actually fish feed. Zerere, in other words, for those who don't know that algae is zerere, we need it because it's a source of the natural feed in the ponds. When you look at your water with this greenish bluish color, that's an ideal water for the fish pond. We also have areas where we have these troublesome weeds which can actually grow in the ponds. Issues of grasses such as bulrush. Bulrush can actually infect, and it can even invade your pond and destroy it completely. It can harbor pests, it can harbor predators, issues of the monitor lizards, Mpurwas in our vernacular name, issues of the otters, which are the mbitis, snakes as well. They can actually have their breeding grounds in the grass. So for aquaculture, we do encourage farmers to keep their areas of ponds as clean as you can see, so that even the reptiles, if they creep, we can actually see 100 meters away from us that there is something that is creeping, and also for the animals as well.
On that note, viewers, we're going to go on a short commercial break. We'll be right back with this and more in the second segment. Stay tuned. Thank you, Zimbabwe, for staying tuned to Agricultural New Directions, Agribusiness, in support of Vision 2030, where we discuss fundamentals when it comes to agriculture here in Zimbabwe. You would find that agriculture is multifaceted, from crop production, livestock production, and today we are looking at aquaculture. And I am joined by Ms. Rabahera, who's going to be taking us through the nitty-gritties of producing fish within an open pond setup. Now, viewers, we encourage you to be a part of these conversations. Feel free to get in touch with the producer, Wazanai Manyore. It's on 0772807506. Alternatively, you can like our Facebook page, Agribusiness with Wadzanai. Make a follow-up on this episode and more on our YouTube channel, Agribusiness with Wadzanai. We are also now available on Twitter, where most of these discussions take place. It's at Agribusiness 110. Now, earlier on, before into the break, we're just talking about weed management within your pond, given that it is an open pond setup. Ms. Rabaera, we are now in the second segment. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Now we want to look at feed. Can you talk to us in terms of the type of feed that you are going to be using? In broilers, we understand that we have starter, grower, then finisher. What is the setup like when it comes to fish production? I also want you to touch on feeding periods, the times of feed when you come in with your feed. Is it in the morning, afternoon, or in the evening? And also talk to us in terms of generally, how do you manage the feed, the nutrients that are essential for the development of the fish?
Let's start from the babies, which we are calling the fry. Usually, as farmers, they don't get the fry. Why? Because this is too small and they are mainly with the breeders. They have their own feed, which is the fry meal. Then we go on to talk of a fingerling, the size of a finger, a man's finger, which are the seeds that we sell to the farmers, or that are sold to the farmers for growing out. We have different feeds, Wadzanai. We are talking of the starters. We have the juvenile feed and the grower's feed. The size of mesh that is used to produce the fish feed is dependent on the size of the fingerling, of the size of the fish, as the meshes are measured and related to the size of the mouths of the fish. The smaller the fish, the more small or the crumbs that are used.
They need to be tiny.
They have to be tiny. While as they grow, the mesh sizes are increasing until we have pellets. For farmers out there, there are a lot of things that we can do as farmers. Sometimes commercial feed gets maybe too exorbitant, too expensive, and beyond reach for many farmers. They also need to come up with farm formulations. We do encourage them to contact us as a department. We can actually assist with feed formulation, on-farm formulations. However, for the commercial, for those who are doing the commercial farming, we do encourage them to buy commercial feed, which is ideal for the size of the fish that they have. Fish requires high protein content, Wadzanai, unlike any other livestock that we have. We are talking of a minimum of maybe 30 to about 45% crude protein, of which the protein is the most expensive nutrient in the fish feed. Hence, the cost of the fish feed is very expensive. We also encourage our farmers to grow other other feeds, like, there's a weed that you call duckweed. There is also azolla. I think there are many other weeds that are out there. If you grow your azolla, your duckweed, it can be a supplementary. You can use it as supplementary feed to the fish, and they also have quite a reasonable amount of crude protein, which can be utilized by our fish so that we can reduce on the cost of production. It is highly important that the farmers are knowledgeable on reducing the cost of production, because if you use commercial feed and you are a small or growing farmer, it means you might not even break even, or you are going to be disappointed and then you quit in this business. We encourage farmers to be innovative, and also there is the use of fertilization of ponds, whereby we are encouraging our farmers to use livestock manure as fertilizers to the pond. For example, you can actually use the pig manure at a rate of 8 kgs per 100 square meters per week. You can use your poultry manure at the rate of 2 to 3 kgs per 100 square meters per week. We can also employ the use of the nanny or the commercial fertilizers, to fertilize our pond so that they are productive, so that they have that algae, the zerere that I talked about earlier on, because it's fish feed.
Okay.
You can use the single superphosphate, you can use double superphosphate, or you can also use the urea. And unfortunately out there, I know what the knife farmers have been, they are being tricked by fish talking, whereby farmers
on social media.
On social media, we are selling the plankton booster and stuff.
Yes.
The plankton booster is just the fertilizer, the commercial fertilizer, the SSPs, the DSPs that are dissolved and then bottled in a gubu, and then I can get my $20 for a 5-liter container of the plankton booster.
Okay.
So we do encourage farmers to be knowledgeable about these things so that they can also reduce on cost of purchasing such things, so that they can do it themselves on the farm.
Now, can you touch briefly on the feeding periods as we close this segment?
Right. Feeding periods. Wazanai fish, when it's cold, they don't feed.
Okay.
And for our young fish, when they are still small, we also need some frequency of feeding. You know, when you have a baby, you can't just say, I'm going to breastfeed him in the morning and then
I'll feed them at night.
You know, they need small, frequent meals. For your fry, your fingerlings, we are expecting maybe for one to be feeding up to 8 times a day. Small, frequent meals, almost like on hourly basis. Maybe from the time the sun is up, when it's warm, we start feeding them, and the feeding frequency is reduced as fish grow. When they are on the grower's feed, we are looking at maybe feeding them twice or thrice a day. So you reduce from 8, 6, 4 until you are at 2. For those who are managed, who have the resources, they can feed up to 16 times. So the more you feed them, the more they grow.
Thank you so much for that. On that note, we have come to the end of the second segment. We're going to go on a short commercial break. We'll be right back with this and more in the third and final segment. Stay tuned. Thank you, Zimbabwe, for staying tuned to Agricultural New Directions, Agribusiness, in support of Vision 2030. We are here in the third and final segment of our program, and we are looking at fish production under the open pond circumstances. Earlier on in episodes prior to this one, we're looking at fish production within a greenhouse setup. To discuss this episode once again, I have taken the liberty of inviting Ms. Rabahera. She was taking us through the feeding regimen on how you can feed your fish to ensure that they grow and you also make a living out of your venture. We are here in the third and final segment. Welcome back.
Thank you, Wazanai.
Each and every enterprise that we have in agriculture is centered on production economics. You need to understand the economies and diseconomies of scale. Looking at fish production, what happens when you overfeed your fish or even when you underfeed your fish? Can you talk to us in terms of the conditions that might come up as a result of overfeeding or underfeeding?
First thing, overfeeding. You know, it's just a waste. Once you overfeed your fish, there is eutrophication in your pond.
Yes.
The feed is going to be wasted, as fish are not going to take all the feed. The feed decomposes within the pond. Then it creates problems of using up all the oxygen. While we were speaking of manuring the ponds with the organic manure, this one thing maybe was skipped, where we saying once your feed is too much in the pond, it's going to utilize all the oxygen for decomposition. And then it releases the carbon monoxide, which becomes toxic to the fish. Or we have a build-up of ammonia within that pond, which is also toxic to the fish. So you need to understand your fish. And for farmers, usually we encourage to feed to satiety, to satisfaction.
Yes.
You throw your feed, you see they are picking within a minute. Maybe half a kg that you have thrown is finished. You add another half a kg, they pick. Then you add another kg, you see they are now dribbling.
Yes.
It means effectively you can actually feed maybe a kg at a time. That's being economical. That's being practical. The disadvantages of underfeeding your fish. You know, fish can also respond to this low diet, low feeding. They can actually grow very, very thin. To the extent that even if you see it, you know, on a plate, you can say, I cannot take this fish. Because the meat to bone ratio is not good. Canova,
but very mature.
Yes. And also, they are going to take longer to get to table size.
Okay.
We are looking at a production cycle of, say, 5-6 months. For me, I would say 8 months is ideal. Because with the feeding abilities of our people, they can never, or maybe let me not say never, they cannot maybe get a 500-gram fish in 6 months.
It's not feasible.
It's not feasible. You really need to be financially sound for you to produce a 500-gram fish in 6-7 months. So if you let them grow maybe up to 8 months, you are giving them more time, and also in employing other supplementary feeds like we discussed earlier on, so that you can harvest your fish when it's maybe, let's talk of a 350-gram size, which is also almost pound size, and a reasonable fish for your table. And also, you know what, Wazanai, it's very important for one to do market surveys before you embark on this business.
Yes.
Because the size of the fish, talk of a 500-gram fish and a kg with 2 fish. In most markets, I've seen that housewives, they don't want big fish.
Yes.
Because they are afraid of employing the use of a meat cutter so that they can slice that fish to fit on plates. You want a whole fish that fits on the plate.
And even in the pan during frying.
Even in the pan during frying.
Yes.
You want a fish that can fit on that pan, so that you save it as a whole fish with its head and its tail.
Yes.
Imagine you are in a family. Who is going to eat the head and who is
going to eat the tail? Yes. Thank you so much, Ms. Rahera. That was a very detailed presentation, and you spoke to us in terms of doing a market survey for our farmers before embarking on such enterprises. We are talking of parting with money. You are going to be injecting some money into your enterprise, and as such you need to do a market survey so that you get a good return per every dollar invested. It was a pleasure having you with us today.
Thank you very much.
There you heard it, viewers. We are talking of fish farming here in Zimbabwe. Zvakanaka ofani kuti even in your backyards, zimwe nguva munoti ngatimbobate ibrela tidye, zimwe nguva munoti ngatibate fish dzedu. You have diversity when it comes to your food within your household. From me, your host Wazanai Manyore, I'm also on Instagram. It's a W Manyore, and the crew behind the scenes. Have yourselves a fabulous evening. Thank you for watching.